Okay, welcome, folks. Welcome, friends. Happy to be here. Been away for a little bit, but the practice continues for all of us, and yeah, happy to practice together. Offer some reflections. So let's yeah get still together. Maybe you give yourself some space and time to take your Dharma heart posture, kind of gentle way that maybe yoga teacher might counsel us to get into a particular posture, asana. Maybe you take your time. Maybe you start on a dime and just drop everything, even though putting down what's sticky leaves a kind of residue of some pain, some sense of neglecting something. Maybe it's okay, you start on a dime. At points in practice, we become bored with samsara, bored by the promises of praise and gain. We just become fatigued by the compulsive effort to keep everything together all the time. And craving is always about one word: next. We dignify our next by talking about spiritual growth, samadhi, progress. But next is next. Just this breath. We're too busy knowing to congeal the notion of my life, my practice, my sit. sometimes it feels almost impossible to take just one mindful breath. It's like we'll never make it through the meditation period. But actually, often only takes just a few conscious breaths in order to land in a slightly or significantly different place. The burden of agitation and avoidance melts even a little. It's worth a lot. Just forgive all phenomena, whatever you call your mind, your worry, hope, and fear, the sounds and the sensations, the pleasantness and the pain. Forgive it all deeply. And trust that in the wake of that forgiveness, you don't have to do much at all. Okay, it's good to practice with you. So one of the characteristics of the self is that it feels accessible. It's me, sort of right here, closer than close. And the self feels unitary. We we have access to it. We literally hear the self. We can visualize the headquarters of self. Uh, Dan Dennett, as I've often shared, described the sense of self as the center of narrative gravity. We sense it, hear it. And whatever I am, it's amenable to conscious inspection. And we might say there are different facets of the self, but they're available to us. And to put it differently, self-view doesn't really have room for the unconscious. And Freud famously said that our species has suffered three humbling discoveries that have eroded our quote naive self-love. And the first was Copernicus, heliocentric, that we circle the sun. It's very funny to me that we've I mean, you know, hindsight is 2020, but it's funny to me that we thought we were literally the center of the universe rather than like one planet in one kind of incidental galaxy, whatever. Okay, that was the first humiliation. And then Darwin, that we evolved from earlier creatures, monkeys, primates, and now we're like, I do my best to differentiate myself from monkeys by getting haircuts, and we're very conscious about we're you know we're not that, you know, we're humans. And then Freud, maybe grandiosely, maybe not, said the third kind of discovery was his own, that we do not govern our own mind. And in Mahayana Buddhism, the Yogacara tradition, the Alaya Vijnana um, my understanding, I'm not a scholar, somewhat akin to the unconscious. And the phrase that I've always heard, the rendering of it was storehouse consciousness. And it's described metaphorically as a kind of um, receptacle for karma, where the kind of potential energy of our habits, our karmic seeds lie in wait. And so I begin with this because a couple of weeks ago, I did something that I could not explain. On the one hand, it wasn't a big deal. It didn't cause serious problems, but it was unskillful, you know. It involved a close friend and colleague, and required an apology. And the details not the point. What's important is I did something that couldn't be explained by my conscious mind. I couldn't point it was like something else was acting on me. And I remember dimly this kind of conscious moment of deliberating. Should I do A or B? And I did A. And it was the wrong thing to do. And in retrospect, it wasn't clear how I thought it would possibly work out in a skillful way. It was like so obvious this was like a bad plan, you know? And this a kind of example. I'm talking about it because it was an example of the kind of disruptiveness of the unconscious. The unconscious, unconsciousness forces they highlight the limits of willful self-control. And we have these patterns that just sometimes they just don't add up. And they only make sense when you add a variable to the equation. And the variable is, I'm a little crazy. That's the variable. You know, I'm a little unknown to myself. And when we're propelled by unconscious forces, like our behavior is it's less adaptive, it's distorted, it's mismatched to the context. And we leave a little wake of debris, you know. And the kind of unconscious process is a form of over disclosure. What we said means too much. What we did too much. We're exposed in some way. And the self-curation project is shattered by unconscious motives, the leakiness of it all, and the kind of fantasy of pulling off the performance of self is challenged by the disruptiveness of the unconscious. It's like we break roles, like the breaking down the fourth wall, right? Of actors or whatever, It's like, okay, the role cracks somehow. The performance of self is has a leak, and we're seen for precisely what we do not want to be seen as. The kilesas, the defilements, have leaked out. And that often comes with some shame, you know, and the gap between our preferred self story and the experience that others have of us is often filled with shame. And in these zones, we get so moralistic about our inner life, very young, very, I don't use the word pejoratively, but very kind of primitive, moralistic mind states. And then maybe we want to hide or deny or no, 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 you don't understand. No, no, no. Okay, breathe. The defilements are not self. Shame always requires a self, requires a measure of identification. And we come to appreciate our mind is not in our possession. We do not belong to ourselves. But we can do the work of integration and to wake up is to wake up to more. all self-knowledge is good news, you know, in this sense. Even when it's bad news, it's good news. And often we need another person to wake up to the kind of unconscious forces that the tectonic plates of our mind, we often need another person. But sometimes our behavior lights the way. Sometimes we do something that we don't understand. We don't know where it came from. Okay, yes, let me investigate. Uh, Wo es war, solich worden, right? It's famous from Freud, sometimes rendered as where it was, there shall I become. Where there was unconsciousness, there shall be understanding. Okay, non-shame, non-shame. We find ways to soothe ourselves, to make room for the pain by connecting with some goodness. And how do you take refuge in something other than self-story? You know? And so we have to feel our way through the exposure and maybe the shame until what's left is actually just some very clean kind of remorse about any difficulties that were caused. And maybe there's some rupture, a repair to be made, maybe not. But either way, we're enriched by the experience, enriched, changed by it. And we've learned something about ourselves, these kind of like dimly sensed disruptive forces of our mind. The storehouse can be appreciated. And the more we develop a kind of awake relationship with those forces, the less we are, they kind of move in this subterranean way to sponsor distorted behavior. And it's possible that, meditation without ever making, without always making the unconscious, turning it into propositional self-knowledge, things we could say, I'm like this, I have this. Even without those words, it's possible it dissolves some of the forces, that the pressure on those tectonic plates eases without even knowing what we've let go of. We don't need to know what we're quantumizing in order for some of the disruptiveness of the storehouse consciousness to be discharged. But we'll never be able to do it all alone. We need each other. And in other words, we might say that that wisdom is a property of dyads rather than individuals. So I offer this for your consideration. And I didn't do anything really bad. It's not going to be in like the newspapers tomorrow. Matthew Brent Silver, Buddhist minister. Da da da. But it was just like, okay, this is this just requires some investigation. So yeah, may we all know ourselves well. I wish you well. Lovely to be with you. Happy to be back. I'll see you next week.